Hi everyone, it's Chelsea from Smoldering Serpents. Welcome to our second edition of the Meet Our Snakes series. So it's been about 3.5 years since I made the last set of videos, and I actually never even finished them. There was a final video I was supposed to make and I never got around to it. So this time we'll be doing a complete introduction of every one of our snakes, every single adult individual in our home. And yeah, we'll do it start to finish. So something that's a little bit different from these videos compared to the last time is I did not film these ones outside. I intended to, but it is summertime in North Carolina, so the air is basically like hot soup. It was hard enough waiting for temperatures that would be comfortable to have the snakes outside for a couple minutes because we were in triple digits for a while there. And even now it's still wanting to be above 90, which is just gets uncomfortable for a lot of the species that we keep very quickly. So it was hard enough waiting for windows of cool enough temperatures. And then when I did have temperatures that would have worked, the second I stepped outside, my skin and the snake were just sticky from the humidity. Yeah, North Carolina is something else. It's a little uncomfortable to breathe sometimes with the heat and humidity. So I very quickly realized that I was just never going to get this done if I had to wait for nicer weather. So I opted to film it in the bathroom where I actually do all snake maintenance stuff. So the lighting in there is okay. Looking at the videos, they come out okay. Of course, natural daylight outside with a nice blue sky overhead is always going to be nicest, but I think it came out pretty well. There are some species that are definitely gonna look a little less great with just indoor lighting from one window, but you know, it's not really about how they look, more just helping you get to know all of our snakes. So that I can do indoor or outdoor. We have 6 videos for you. So this first one is the Asian rat snakes group, and there are 8 individuals in there, so a nice little group. And most of the videos are going to be about that length. There's maybe one that's 9, and I think maybe one that's 7, but 7, 8, 9. So all the videos should be very similar length. And yeah, I've made good progress with filming already, so I should be able to release these throughout the summer fairly consistently. And it's about time. I've been meaning to do this for a long time. And yeah. Other than that, we're going to jump right in. Don't worry, the orientation of the video is going to flip as soon as this introduction is done. I just find it easier to film introductions in this mode. Other than that, enjoy. If you have any questions about any individuals or species in general, feel free to ask, and I'm happy to answer. And let's just jump right in. Okay, we're going to start with Anapel. She is our oldest Russian rat snake. She's from 2015, so she actually turned 10 years old this last month, which is a little bit crazy to believe, but time flies. So she is both our oldest and our largest. I'll give weights just to try to help compare. It can be a little bit hard looking through a screen to get a sense of their actual size. So she's about 600 grams. She'll fluctuate a little bit. She produces a clutch most years, so of course that's going to play into that. But she usually lands about 600 grams when she's looking her best. So she's a good size. She's definitely not the biggest Russian rat you'll see. There's plenty that are bigger, but she's a solid snake. You can see she's absolutely beautiful. I would say she's about 5 feet long, give or take. So she's a respectable size. She's absolutely beautiful. I feel like she has one of the nicest head shapes that I've seen in a Russian rat snake. And it's been a real joy to watch her mature. She's been probably the best example of the continued development of a snake's body and their muscles and their proportions long after when we typically think of them as mature. Because, you know, she hit 4 years old and we could see a clear difference that she's a mature snake. She's producing beautiful, healthy clutches. She's looking amazing. But the difference that we continue to see year after year in how her body's changing and how her face shape is changing, and she continues to grow. So, you know, there's a lot more to the process of them maturing than just hitting breeding age. That, you know, it extends so far beyond that. Even now at 10, I can tell that she looks different from last year. She continues to fill out and get more broad and just stronger, honestly. So yeah, she's a wonderful girl. She's just I say she's the best, knowing darn well I couldn't pick a favorite, but she is one of the best for sure. She's very easygoing, an absolute monster when it's feeding time, but otherwise she is just a sweetheart. She eats a day-old chick once a week, every 5 days in the spring and right after she's laid eggs, but usually about once a week. And she actually shares an enclosure with her daughter, which we'll see right now. Here's Tanara. And Tanara is the first snake that we've ever held back. She's from 2020, so she's 5 years old. She is a little bit smaller than her mother, but about the same size that Anapel was 5 years ago. So Tanara's about 500 grams, and she's a solid girl. She's going into shed right now, so she's a little darker than usual, but you can still see that she's absolutely gorgeous with those yellows on her chin. She has a bit of a deeper color than Anapel. Bonks on my elbow. You can see as they're poking around on me, Tanara is showing very well, and Anapel is honestly the snake we most notice this with, but they're not very head shy at all, the Russian rats. They will nose around, they'll stick their face in your ear, they'll stick their face in your armpits, they will stick their face anywhere it can go without any fear, really. So they're a lot of fun to handle for that reason alone. They're just not skittish at all. Babies can be a little bit shy, but they very quickly grow into this very confident and carefree snake who's just not bothered by much. The biggest catch for the species in general is their need for brumation. And you know, you'll see people who go, oh, mine doesn't need brumation, he goes through winter just fine. And there might be exceptions, but in our experience of raising and keeping many of these snakes is that most of them are going to want to be cooled at some point. We try to avoid it in their younger years if they'll let us get away with just feeding them right through the winter for their first or second winter. But after that, they're going to go in the cooler. And sometimes they won't give you that choice. For example, Anapel just stopped eating. Her very first winter, only a couple months old, she just stopped eating and needed to be cooled. So that is just the catch with the species. You can see Tanara's beautiful belly there. That's one of my favorite hidden secrets of a Russian rat snake, is their little triangle pattern on their belly. And you can see, even going into shed, the beautiful sheen on Tanara. She's about 4.5 feet long or so. Yeah, she's a really nice girl. The two of these are cohabitating quite nicely. They get a little intense around feeding time, but as long as I'm careful, they're fine. And the rest of the time, they are sharing the space very nicely. They're rotating in different spots. Sometimes they hang out together. They just coexist very peacefully. And you'll see she goes up on my shoulder because that's where all the Russian rats want to end up. And here we have Tanara's younger half-sister. So we used to have a different male named Kovaki, who ended up being not very fertile. Over the course of 2 years and 4 clutches, we ended up only getting 1 hatchling each year. So 2 hatchlings total. The first year was a male who we sold, and then last year was this little girl, and we decided to hold her back. So her name is Zhiva, and Zhiva, if you just take a look at her colors, you can see why we held her back, because she's taking a lot after her father. Kovaki was extremely bright yellow, which is actually why we brought him in, to add some genetic diversification to our Russians, but also to improve their color a little bit. And you can see that at the very least, we got Zhiva out of it, and I can't complain about that. She's very sweet. She's actually pretty big for a yearling Russian rat. So I am looking forward to watching her as she grows, because she's already quite big and clearly gorgeous and very sweet. She's basically the perfect Russian rat already. I usually tell people to not expect their baby Russian rats to eat off tongs until about 6 months plus. They just tend to be a little bit shy with eating when they're younger. They do consistently eat, but they want it dropped so they can just gently pick it up. Now, Zhiva has been eating off tongs for quite some time, so she's a little bit of an overachiever, which I'm always happy about. But yeah, she's about 130 grams now, so she's really growing quite quickly, and her colors are coming in so fast. I did not expect to see this amount of yellow on her already, but I could not be happier with our 3 girls. They're all very beautiful and unique in their own ways. I'm sure they look similar to people who don't see them every day, but they all are very special individuals, and especially holding them back and watching them grow up it's a really fun experience to see them maturing. To watch them crawl out of the egg and then watch them grow up and have babies of their own. It's pretty special. Now here we have our one and only boy. Here is Kuril, and Kuril is our old faithful when it comes to breeding Russians. He is very nosy, as you can see. He's one of my favorite snakes to just put on my shoulders and walk around because he's the best with it. He'll just hang out. He's very good at hanging on, so he never feels like he's gonna fall because he seems to know he won't let himself fall. He wraps into my hair. He'll hold on to hair clips. He'll hold on to my shoulders. He'll wrap around my arms. He is a clinger. Yeah, so Kuril was actually hatched out of one of the very first melanistic Russian rat snakes in the US. So he's het melanistic. We've never bred for it. Personally, I don't really love the melanistic Russians. I just really love the wild types. So he's a bit unique in that way, but honestly, his personality is what shines for me with him. He's so laid back. He's so curious, and his interest in the world just never fades. He always wants to see what's going on. You can see he's a little bit more slender. He's about a 450 gram snake. His weight kind of fluctuates. He's usually pretty thin right about now after breeding season, but he'll pack it back on and get back to about 500 before brumation. So definitely different proportions from the females. Definitely more slender, but he's a really special boy, and you can see there his beautiful belly with that pattern that I love. He's a special boy. He produces gorgeous, healthy babies, flawless babies, and he's just a real good buddy to hang out with. So next up we have the Japanese rat snakes. I'm not even going to cut that out. The Japanese rat snakes are actually going to probably suffer the most from the lighting in here. It's not going to do them justice. I have accepted that. Eska's not too bad here. She's our female, and she's much more green, so the green is coming through just fine. But anyone who's seen a Japanese rat snake in person knows that they can be a million different colors depending what the lighting is that you have them under. So Eska's coming through. She's okay, looks pretty accurate because she is more green right now. She's younger. She's a 2021, so she's turned 4 now, and they do tend to get a lot more blue as they age. You can see it coming in on her face, and in between her green splotches on her back there, she's got quite a bit of blue coming in, and on her sides and belly there. So I anticipate she'll get plenty of blue, but she's young. You can see it in her face too. She has maturing to do. She's not a super big fan of being handled, but we only got her last year, and we're taking it slow with her. She's doing really well. She's on the smaller side. She's 350 grams, and I would say about 3.5 feet long. So she has growing to do, but she is extraordinarily beautiful and sweet and is fitting in just fine. And here we have our boy. Here's Jinx. Now Jinx decided to do me dirty, and he shed right before this video, and he came out darker than I've ever seen him. So Usually he has a much more almost teal blue look to him, especially on his face and his cheeks. But he's come out much, much darker from this shed. I really did a double take when I saw him. But what's happening is he's just growing up. That's all it is. Japanese rat snakes, they get deeper and deeper blue as they grow. I personally love it. Of course, I loved his brighter colors as he was younger, but I'm really loving this dark blue that's coming in. He's a 2018, so he is 7 years old, which is really hard to believe. He's my baby. He is the only Canadian snake. He's the only one to move with me from Canada to North Carolina. So yeah, he's my special boy. As you can see, he is aging beautifully, like fine wine. They only get better with age, I think. And he's as outgoing as ever. He's about a 450 gram snake, and I'd say about 4.5 feet long. Yeah, so not huge. The Kunashir Islands are smaller than the mainlands. Jinx comes from traceable Kunashir Island lineage, so they're smaller. They have smaller clutches. We only got 3 eggs out of them this year, but after struggling for so many years to get any eggs, we're just happy with 3 big healthy babies. But that's very typical for the Kunashirs. Yeah, he's just such a good boy. He's so beautiful. I mean, you could get lost in those colors. It just looks like dragon scales. He eats a day-old chick once a week. Very standard. Most of the snakes are about this size. Most of them have a very similar diet. And, yeah, he's just my buddy. He's just gotten better and better with the years. Who couldn't love that face, right? He is the sweetest. So last but not least, we have the Taiwan beauties. So this is Buttercup. Buttercups are female, and she's a 2020, so 5 years old. This is our 2nd year producing babies, baby Taiwans. And Buttercup, she's definitely not the biggest Taiwan you'll see. Again, she's 5 years old. She does have some growing to do, but she's not going to get that much bigger. She's about 900 grams, and I would say about 6 feet long. Somewhere around there, maybe a touch over. It's sometimes hard to get a sense with these beauty snakes. Their tails are so long but so skinny. Sometimes they don't quite look as long as they are. But I would say she's about 6 feet, maybe only a touch over. And she's a bit of an interesting color, I find, because she is getting a lot more yellow on her. But she's always had this slightly greenish tint to her, which I find really interesting. And I can tell some of the babies that are going to look like her, they're quite dark at hatching. She was also quite dark when we got her as a very tiny baby. And you can see just how laid back she is. We barely handle her. Her enclosure is at the top of a ceiling-high stack, and she's a little bit difficult to get out because it is quite a complex enclosure with lots of branches, and she's very quick. So we don't bother her too often, but when we do get her out, you can see she's just naturally very sweet. She's pretty easygoing. Taiwans can be pretty quick, especially as babies, but you can see just how naturally laid back they do become most of the time. I think they're, I hesitate to throw out the word underrated because it's honestly overused a lot these days, but I do find that Taiwans are underrated, especially considering the other beauty species, especially the Vietnamese blue beauties, their popularity. I understand loving a blue snake. I mean, we had BBBs at one point. I do love them as well, but when you consider the temperament of Taiwans and their beauty, I mean, just look at her. They really are overlooked a lot. Basically, anyone who comes to me looking for an outgoing, larger colubrid is just going to get a little speech about Taiwans from me because they've won me over completely. I have really enjoyed keeping them, both as a snake that you can interact with, but also as a display snake. They're just really great all around, super easy to care for, very hardy, and yeah, I think more people should consider them, honestly, if they have the space. And here we have our boy, Taser. And this is our last snake of the video. We're ending with the biggest by far. Taser's a 2019, and he is about 1,400 grams. So he's a big boy. He doesn't necessarily look it all curled up like this, but he's a good 7 feet long. And like I said with the beauties, a lot of that is very skinny tail, so they don't always look as big as they are. But when he's sprawled out across his enclosure, he is very impressive. So this boy eats 1 to 2 chicks every week, usually 2, but sometimes I decide to skimp on him a little bit. And he's about the weight I want him. I wouldn't want him having any extra weight on him. So they certainly have slower metabolisms than, for example, the blue beauties. When we had blue beauties and they were this size, they needed a lot more food than that to maintain a good weight. So the Taiwans do get overweight pretty easily, which is just another reason they're kind of a little bit different from the other beauty species. But as you can see from him just sitting there looking at us, they also have a very different personality. I find that the baby Taiwans, their biggest fault, I wouldn't consider it a fault, but the biggest catch with baby Taiwans is that they're very quick. So, they're very flighty, but they do grow into their confidence naturally and pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you end up with a snake like this, 7 feet long, just happy to chill out for a bit. So I find them extremely rewarding. Yeah, you can just see how sweet he is. And we have handled him quite a bit, but it's also just been a very natural progression as he ages with his confidence and curiosity. I mean, you can't go a day without seeing him and Buttercup, just watching what's happening in the house. When they're in shed, they'll tuck away, but even then, the number of times Taser's been sitting wide open in his cage, just sprawled out, completely in zombie mode. Like, they're just unafraid. They're unafraid, they're nosy, they're curious, they always have to see what's going on, even when they're literally blind from being in shed. But, yeah, Taser doesn't feel like he wants to miss a thing. So, yeah, I really can't say enough about the species, to be honest. You see the white highlights in his sides. He has these pinkish undertones. His apical pits, the little dots you see on the ends of each scale, are actually pink, which is really interesting, and you don't notice it till you get really close. But there's all these subtle colors on a snake where, I mean, his overall colors are really not subtle. They're kind of slap you in the face with yellow and black, but there's just so many subtle, beautiful tones in there. Yeah, they're really special. So that's it for our first video in this series. Really nice group of snakes. They are some of my favorites. Like I said, if you have any questions about individuals or the species in general, feel free to ask either in the comments or private message me on social media. I'm always happy to answer. Yeah, so the next one should be up shortly. It will be one of the North American rat snake groups. I have 3 videos to cover all of our North American rat snakes. We do have a lot. So that should be up shortly. And until then, hope you all have a great day.